Hello and welcome to TV Coast to Coast, our weekly web chat featuring TV critics from media properties across America. I'm Vicki Hyman with the Star Ledger and NJ.com, and joining me this week is Dave Walker from the New Orleans Times-Picayune and NOLA.com, and Kristi Turnquist from the Oregonian in Portland and OregonLive.com. Cleveland's Mark DeWidziak will rotate in next week. In the first of our two segments here, we're looking at HBO's The Newsroom. Aaron Sorkin is the man behind it, the man behind West Wing as well, and The Social Network. It returned last night for a third, final, and blessedly shortened season, at least in my opinion. A mere 6 episodes for him to lecture us about mass media ethics in that very special. Now, I know Kristi wrote a great piece diagnosing Sorkinitis, and in fact, I was worried about turning this into a hate chat, but Dave tells me he actually enjoys it. Well, actually, he says he doesn't hate it as much as me and Kristi do. So let's start with him first. Dave, how could you?
You know, it's funny, but I've never been as bugged about this show as a lot of critics are. And I've always sort of thought of it as much as a fantasy as Game of Thrones. And maybe that's it. I don't know. Its stories and characters come from like a pre-60 Minutes era of broadcast news, you know, before network news departments were profit centers and Bigfoot anchors were real. You know, they stomped the earth on behalf of the Church of Big J journalism. Maybe because I'm a news geezer who lived through the transition out of that era, it's always been possible for me to imagine Peter Jennings or Dan Rather doing and saying exactly what Jeff Daniels, Will McAvoy does and says in pursuit of news gathering purity. A quote from this season summarizes that mission statement. We don't do good TV, we do the news. I've always loved Aaron Sorkin's writing, way back to Sports Night, and even including Studio 60. Even the bombastic and preachifying tendencies he's got are appealing to me. Most of the criticisms of the newsroom and bombastic and preachifying are a couple you read a lot, and I have a feeling we're going to be hearing more about that in a minute. They're totally valid. Its flaws just don't bum me out all that much, and to be honest, I sort of watch to let the words wash over me, kind of like church. And I watch and wonder when the dragons might show up. That would be okay with me too. So, who's first? Let me have it.
Kristi?
Well, I'll jump in. I think that's a very tolerant attitude you're showing there, Dave. I certainly do agree with you that this feels like it's coming from another era, and that's part of the problem. I mean, I think, like you, that Sorkin has done just some great work. I'm a big fan of the work that he did, as you say, on Sports Night. I love the screenplays that he did for the movies Moneyball and The Social Network, which makes it even more irritating that he keeps hitting the wrong notes in the newsroom when he's writing about these people and the issues that they face, and he just keeps doing it season after season, and it does seem like he is suffering from a variety of chronic ailments when it comes to this show, and I did write about some of them, and as we've mentioned, certainly one of them I would call pomposity-itis, which is very closely related to terminal preachiness, and that's Sorkin using his characters as mouthpieces for basically delivering what he thinks is wrong with cable TV news. But that is a far from fresh topic because everybody and their grandmother has had plenty to say about what's wrong with TV news. And in fact, you know, the more this goes on in the newsroom, the more I'm reminded of the 1976 movie Network and Peter Finch's, you know, crazed anchorman character who keeps ranting, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." And that was back in 1976. So these aren't exactly breaking news headlines that Sorkin is giving us. And you know, and the show also suffers from such illnesses as hindsight is 2020-osis, where, you know, for some reason he sets it in the recent past, and has the staff cover events that have already happened, which lends it a really insufferably sort of smug, "I told you so" attitude, where he's able to kind of have the last word on things that have already happened. I mean, there's something uniquely maddening about that, and it also has a bit of the windbag syndrome. Sorkin writes great dialogue, but oh dear, these characters all sound like him. I could go on and on, but then I would be as guilty of these various failings as I'm accusing Sorkin of being. So I think I will end with the good news. The prognosis is good, and that this is the final season of the Newsroom. And as Vicki said, it's only 6 episodes. Oh, thank heavens. Vicki, what do you have to contribute to our conversation?
Well, I hate to ring the same bells as you, Kristi, but I must. I almost felt like Aaron Sorkin was baiting critics like us throughout the first episode with all these lines that I just wanted to throw right back into his face, including "that's some huckleberry bad writing." But the line that really sums up the show for me, and my editors would never let me put this in the paper, but we're not in the paper right now, is the quote, "I'm a douche on the side of the angels," which is spoken by the ratings-obsessed network chief Reese Lansing as he faces a hostile takeover of the network by his 2 younger half-siblings, who literally want to dispose of the news component of the network for parts. And it's actually, I don't mind this storyline so much, but I just can't get past the obnoxiousness with which he infuses all of his older characters, because all the 20-somethings just need to be schooled by the older characters. I agree with Aaron Sorkin on most things about, mass media, and I agree with many of the calls that the guys in charge make, but they just do it in such an obnoxious way that I literally want to punch them in the face. And I can't help but feeling that even viewers who aren't as vested in the future of mass communications as myself, another journalism dinosaur, will also be turned off by this piousness. And the preachiness is actually less bothersome in the 2nd and 3rd episodes, which I also viewed when the whistleblower plot starts to get traction. But I will probably hate watch through the end, and for HBO's purposes, that's probably just fine, because hate watching is better than not watching at all. So that is it for the Newsroom. We probably won't be talking about it again. It's probably more than enough. Our next segment will feature a potpourri featuring the comeback of HBO's The Comeback, a PBS documentary about sled hockey, and one of Hallmark's holiday offerings. See you next time.